Sometimes a game's entire reputation can precede and even supersede itself in unexpected ways. If you've ever heard the phrase, "all your base are belong to us," you probably get what I'm saying. In the case of Toaplan-developed, almost everyone who spends any decent amount of time on the internet knows about the horrendous English translation to the UK Mega Drive version of the game.
Comparatively few people seem to realize what kind of game Zero Wing actually is, though, as All Your Base is really just a testament to bad Japanese to English translation in the eyes of most. But Zero Wing also made its way to the PC Engine CD-ROM too, and while the Mega Drive version's infamous scene is noticeably absent, it was replaced with voice cinema scenes and CD Red Book audio. But when you strip it all away, what is Zero Wing really all about? Let's take a closer look.
For the most part, Zero Wing has some pretty basic gameplay, which falls basically within the usual Toaplan fare when it comes to powering up your ship, called the Zig. Multiple pickups of the same color will increase your weapon power, and each color corresponds to a different type. Red for spread shots, blue for lasers, and green for homing shots. These pickups will appear in specific order, so advanced planning to get the maximum power is pretty easy. As you collect these power-ups, a pair of options that flank the Zig will appear and grow in size. These options can also protect the Zig from enemy fire.
The Zig can also increase its speed by collecting a speed power-up, which can be handy when it comes to avoiding some of the speedier enemy shots. There's also a special bomb pickup which can serve a couple of purposes. While attached to the front of the Zig, it can add a layer of protection in case a player rams an enemy by mistake. But the bomb can also be launched into the enemy opposition to take out a sizable swath of foes, or heavily damage a larger craft.
But that's not all that Zero Wing offers in terms of gameplay. One unique aspect of the game is the tractor beam, which can be used to capture enemy ships to be used as barriers or weapons themselves. When a ship is caught in the tractor beam, it can also affect how the Zig handles as well, depending how large the enemy vessel is. Used as a weapon, an enemy ship can wreak major havoc on enemy forces and bigger enemies that would take much longer to subdue with regular and even enhanced fire. This is a pretty useful tactic given how difficult Zero Wing gets later on.
The control in the game is fairly forgiving and allows for relatively easy navigation through enemy shots and ships, though speed power-ups are definitely needed to effectively move later in the game. Die though, and not only are you stripped of your firepower and slow to comparable crawl, but you're sent back to a checkpoint. As such, a fair bit of memorization is needed to get the hang of the harder levels, starting especially with Stage 6. Thankfully, there are several checkpoints within the stages, and the difficulty is much more forgiving than, say, Hellfire and Genesis and Mega Drive. Oh, and unlike the Mega Drive game, Zero Wing on PC Engine has 10 levels instead of only 8, and they can be cruel and relentless.
Scoring in Zero Wing is a tad on the interesting side. The usual score for killing is in place, and collecting power-ups beyond the maximum shot power will net players a tidy bonus score, so finding a weapon that works best is recommended throughout the game.
But the real point of interest here has to be that as players progress through each stage, the score will climb based on the distance traveled. This bonus also happens to be fairly sizable and greatly helps in obtaining extends as you make your way through the game. A very generous extend score allows for many extra chances at success, but the difficulty later in the game mitigates their efficacy.
Ah yes, the all-important presentation. After all, Zero Wing lives in infamy because of this very category. The absence of the all-your-base cinema may or may not be a deal-breaker to some, but there are still plenty of cinema scenes here, typical of most PC Engine CD games. But these scenes are very sparse in terms of both animation and sound.
ルドウィヒ様、申し訳ございません。
セイレン、お前ともあろう者が。
お言葉ながら、我が軍の情報が地球連邦軍に流れているのでは。
The in-game visuals aren't too bad, and there is at least limited layer scrolling, but the sprites, especially the Zig in particular, lack the sort of animation that would have really made them pop. This seems to be common in other games from Toaplan, including Hellfire and Truxton.
On the sound front, the OST is pretty strong, and the CD Red Book audio gives Zero Wing's soundtrack some real oomph, but while some arrangements are really catchy, there are also not so great ones.
The sound effects themselves are also on the iffy side, though the explosions have a good amount of punch. But again, some music, additional sound effects, and better sound balance during the cutscenes would really have made them special.
So overall, Zero Wing feels good and solid, but how does it stack up? Let's take a look. Solid control feels manageable even after getting reduced to basic speed. Firing and tractor reaction time is also good.
But moving the Zig around can be difficult in the later stages without at least one speed pickup.
After getting used to using the options as shield and learning enemy fire patterns, the first 7 stages at least are very manageable.
But this game certainly doesn't pull its punches, and skill is required to progress thanks to checkpoints.
The PC Engine CD version benefits from 2 extra stages than on the Mega Drive.
Zero Wing offers a lot of gameplay, and the practice needed to defeat it adds to the length rather well.
Visual scenes look great and some of the stage designs are pretty nifty.
The lack of animation and drab colors make for a fairly bland visual experience in-game.
The OST arrangement via Red Book Audio has a few standout pieces, but also a few duds. The rest is passable.
Sound effects are only passable as well, albeit with decent sounding explosions. Music and more sound effects are sorely needed in the cinema scenes.
On the ingenuity front, the tractor beam adds a pretty good twist to the typical 16-bit Toaplan fare.
Nabbing enemies and flinging them at your opposition is not only effective and fun, but also satisfying. The rest? Yeah.
Zero Wing is more or less a cult classic, and it may well stay that way thanks to its MAME status and only mildly interesting enemy capture mechanic. But regardless, it's still a decently fun game when the unintentional comedy is stripped away, and it gets a 3.5 out of 5. PC Engine copies of Zero Wing are actually much pricier than I remember. Once upon a time they were about $20, but now sell for no less than $50 at auction, with new copies topping $120. It is region free though, and it can be played in any TurboGrafx CD or PC Engine CD unit. The Mega Drive version isn't much less expensive, and in some cases even pricier, but also region coded, and as such, it won't work in a North American system.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah. 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 No. Nah. Yeah. Yeah. No more.